Greetings everybody, Monsignor David here with love from St. Joseph's Takapuna. It's the fifth Sunday of Easter, and of course it's also Mother's Day. Well, on Mother's Day, I inevitably think back to my own mother. She's been dead now for almost 13 years. But I remember my mother coming to a school production when I was about 6 years of age. It was my first time on stage. I had to proclaim a 3-line poem, managed to mess up the lines a bit, but my mother said to me at the end, "That was so good. That was wonderful. What a wonderful son you are." Every morning, Mum would be up to prepare us for school with breakfast before we left home to catch the bus. And we always had to present ourselves to Mum before we went out the door for a kiss and an inspection of our faces to make sure they were clean and that our shirts were tucked in properly to our trousers. We were looking respectable. Mum used to say, "I love you, but I don't want any son of mine going out looking scruffy." I remember my mother also on another occasion being a little bit embarrassed because the neighbour came in and said, "David has been caught stealing a nectarine from my tree." And my mother said to me, "David, no good Catholic boy should be stealing fruit from next door." My mother, I knew that she loved me no matter what. I knew she was always there for me and cared. But I also didn't quite realize at the time, but began to understand later that what Mum did for me was to help me understand how to behave well and to discover something of my identity, who I was, not only as her son, but as a child of God. Our identity. It's an interesting thing to reflect on, especially during COVID days. How often have I seen dads out during the day playing with their children on fields? They can't do that normally, but I bet they're rediscovering what it means to be a dad. Maybe you are mums too, thinking, "My goodness, I have the children 24 hours a day around me." What a challenge that is. Our identity. Then there's our Christian identity, isn't there? And in the second reading of today's Mass from the first letter of Peter, the second chapter, we're told we are a people who are holy, who are set aside to proclaim the wonders of God, who are called to sing God's praise. That's our identity. Our life is intended to be some kind of song, and not only in what we say, but also in what we do, that praises God. But I have to say, when I look at myself, I don't always feel very holy, and I don't know that I always do a great job at singing God's praise in all the various events of life. Our identity. But it's interesting, reflecting also on the other two readings, that our Christian identity, the sense of being disciples of Jesus, children of God, grows through the bad and through the good. In the first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 6, we're told about a little moment of jealousy and dissension in the early Christian community when there's protests between various groups about how much food am I going to get? Jealousy. In the Gospel, we're told about, which is John chapter 14, we're told about Philip not understanding Jesus at all when he's talking about where he's going, completely confused and asking sort of questions to try to understand. And just before today's Gospel, Jesus again talking about where he's going, Simon Peter says to him, "I'll go wherever you go, Lord." And Jesus says to him, after having washed his feet, Jesus says to him, "Peter, you will deny me 3 times before the cock crows. Will you really go with me wherever I want to go?" So, our Christian lives, like Philip and Peter and the early Christian community in Jerusalem, are fraught with problems and struggles. But through all these problems and struggles, we grow. The early Christian community in Jerusalem, as a result, of their jealousy and wrangling, chose 7 leaders, among them Stephen and Philip, who became great missionaries. Philip in the Gospel, a different Philip in the Gospel, as a result of his question, is told that we all are people with a future because Jesus is preparing a place for us in the Father's house. And Peter, of course, may have said, "I'll follow you, Jesus," but lacks commitment. However, he works through it and becomes the great leader of the disciple band after Jesus ascends to heaven. We grow in our identity through the good times and the bad times, understanding what it means to be children of God, followers of Jesus. A couple of days ago, I picked up the newspaper to read the death notices in the morning, as I always do. And I saw there the notice of a woman whose I had anointed in the North Shore Hospice about 3 days earlier. When I went to anoint her, there was another woman in the room with her. We'll call the other woman Jean. And I said to Jean, "Are you this lady's daughter?" And Jean said, No, she said. But she said, "I came to New Zealand about 42 years ago, unmarried mother, 1 little child, looking for somewhere to live." And she said, "This lady and her husband gave me a flat at their place, helped me." She said, "I've been there 42 years. She said, "We haven't always been the best of friends. We haven't always had the easiest of times. I've sometimes let her down and we've had our little disagreements." But she said, "I will sit with her until she dies. She's been like a surrogate mother to me." There is Jean, through the good times and the bad, growing in love and, if you like, proclaiming the greatness of the woman who was dying by being there. Here are we as well, called to sing God's praises and growing in the way we do that through our good times and our struggles. Thanks to my mother. Thanks to all our mothers for the way they give us an identity and help us to know what it means to be children of God.